data centric to be say data centric. So why basically non-student is posting a reply? But data centric means using data science. Centric means something, driven means something. So centric means using science, data science. Okay, what do you mean by driven? What is the current status of our society? Is it data centric or data driven? Anyone? I'm still waiting replies for. I'm still waiting for your replies. Then post replies. Why? What is the difference? Because you need to see. Because each and every application, each and every society is somehow consuming, somehow producing the data. Right. So basically, this question is with respect to our application. Application maybe a software, maybe software system, anything. So when we say it is when we say something, some application is data centric, it is having different meaning, and if it is data driven, it is different. Okay, so if you take the example of Google Earth or maybe Google Map, so to generate the Google Maps, maybe like we are using Google Map to find out the traffics in the real-time basis. So Google Map is a typical example of data-driven application, right? Because it is generating a data for the user by consuming the data for the users outsourced. So basically, Google Map is somehow syncing or retrieving or extracting or collecting the data from different users in a certain location and generating the map of the same location for the different set of users who is going to reach to that area. So it is purely driven. It is driven. Driven means primarily you are collecting the data from user in and generating a new data or maybe processing data and then sharing the same data with the new user, right? So it is like collecting and generating. That's it. And your nature is not basically adding something into it. ऐसा नहीं है कि आप जो data ले रहे हैं उसको generate कर रहे हैं. Now that is one part. Similarly, if you can design a software application which can collect the data of various patients in the country, deceased persons, and with your application, if you are able to draw the pattern that if you infected by certain disease, it may lead to other diseases, something like that. It will become centric, right? Because centric means the first nature of your application is to collect the data. Obviously, collect the data and then process it, then generate new trends, right? So if your application is adding something new on the data, because data is actually the basically the bottom line. Otherwise, आप कुछ कर ही नहीं सकते हो, application बना के करेंगे क्या? So Niti says correctly, like data centric means you define goals to solve. Naturally, goal means what is the possible objective of your system. So that is goal. So let's say कि हम एक system बना रहे हैं जिसका objective ये है कि अगर किसी पर्सन को एक डिसीज होती है तो उसको और दूसरी क्या डिसीज हो सकती है ये डिटेक्ट करना. वो कैसे कर रहे हैं आप? दूसरे और जो पास्ट में पर्सन से उनके डिसीज रिकॉर्ड्स निकाल के उसमें एक पैटर्न ढूंढने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं. तो नेचुरली इट इन्वॉल्व सम सर्टेन काइंड ऑफ एनालिसिस, राइट? बट इन केस ऑफ डेटा ड्रिवन इट इज नॉट लाइक द केस. डेटा ड्रिवन में आप क्या करते हैं? एनालिसिस एंड प्रोसेसिंग इतना हैवी अप्लाई नहीं करते हैं, ठीक है? और उसका अपना कोई ऑब्जेक्टिव नहीं होता. जैसे गूगल मैप में हमने कहा, इट इज सिंपली लाइक यू आर कलेक्टिंग द you're collecting the GPS value or GPS data from the users जो एक certain area में है कि वहाँ पर क्या उनकी, जैसे अगर आप available हो किसी जगह पे तो आपका जो अगर GPS enable है तो Google Map is collecting your data, means how fast you're moving, what is your the coordinate, and based on these records of different users at certain location, it simply generates a traffic load, traffic strength, whatever, right? So it is not basically having different goal. It's a simple goal, right? But sensitive में बहुत clear goal होगा. That is one part. Second, you will be adding lot of things onto that data. So mention 3 situations where this okay. So this is something important. So question number 6. Mention 3 situations where the DB database or DBMS is not suggested to be good option. तो आप इसको आराम सर्च कर सकते हैं. There are different options. Now let's go to the daily sheet 3-4. Okay, so here the question number 1 is discussed. I think it is discussed. Question number 2, it is okay. Now we have different types of database. So ये तो I don't know आप लोगों को idea होगा I think because it's a very generic term. वो आप बहुत कुछ सुनते हैं, centralized, distributed. So इसमें primarily ऐसा नहीं है. So there is still we are having two classifications, two classes. So database के जो classifications अगर आपको समझने हैं तो इस तरीके से हो सकता है कि first we have centralized view. Then we have second as distributed. Okay, distributed view. Right. Okay, not this is distributed database, right? So there are only, this is the first level of classification. In centralized, we don't have any classes, subclasses, but in case of distributed, we could have parallel DB. 2.2.2 is client not clear to DB. 2.2.3 is related DB. So these are the 3 subclasses. So in the distributed database category, we could have 3 possible options: parallel database, peer-to-peer database, and federated database. So parallel database, basically it is a kind of client server, but multiple databases entities attached. Okay. जैसे हम कहते हैं कि जो जैसे फेसबुक है जो ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस यूज करते हैं, सो अगर आप फेसबुक का अपना डेटाबेस देखें, so they have arranged their databases. Database servers basically. Server means database. So if we have, Facebook is having 11 different databases on 11 different countries, and they are arranged in some kind of parallel arrangement. Okay. So if you raise an query on the database which is kept in US server, and you are now working on the top of Indian server, so it will be giving you the data values, right, on this parallel database arrangement. So parallel is two different environment, right? Similarly, if you take this second case, peer-to-peer database, peer-to-peer means it is a typical case of I think the torrent आप use करते हैं. So torrent, it is kind of torrent mechanism. So here we are not having, so peer-to-peer DB is basically, it is nothing but it is a client-client database. We do not have any centralized database, right? We do not have any centralized database. We have a computing environment जहाँ पर आप data exchange करते हैं, तो आप torrent की platform में जाते हैं. So that is the platform which supports this end-to-end or peer-to-peer sharing, right? So that is different kind of arrangement. So in case of peer-to-peer database arrangement, there is no centralized database. The data is kept in the end systems, peer systems. Peer means जो individuals के लैपटॉप और डेस्कटॉप होते हैं वहाँ पर होता है, वहाँ डायरेक्टली आप शेयर करके उसको चेंज कर सकते हैं, right? That is one way. The third option is probably is the federated database. So federated database means it is often referred as a heterogeneous database. हेट्रोजीनियस मतलब ये है कि आपके पास जो डेटाबेस है उसमें बहुत डिफरेंट टाइप के सर्वर्स हैं, डेटाबेस सर्वर्स हैं। लेट्स से कि अगर आप एक ऐसा अरेंजमेंट करते हैं कि your database is able to take care of the structured data, and there is another database which is able to take care of images data. So any system which is having this kind of arrangement, the database may we are having different types of database, right? Who's trying to join? Okay, I think Kushagra का बार-बार problem हो रहा है. So let ask him to join again. Okay, now so these are the three possible cases, right? So primarily first level पे दो classification है, and then within this distributed we have three subclasses further. Now there is a multimedia database. So multimedia is basically type. It's not a type of database, right? So it is because it is coming from the nature of data. So वो type नहीं हो सकता है. Database का nature type नहीं हो सकता, वो data का type हो सकता है. और अगर आप मल्टीमीडिया डेटा को रखते हैं, मल्टीमीडिया मीन्स एनीथिंग लाइक ऑडियो, वीडियो, टेक्स्ट, एनीथिंग व्हिच इज बियॉन्ड स्ट्रक्चर एंड बियॉन्ड सेमी स्ट्रक्चर, राइट? तो सो मल्टीमीडिया डेटाबेस कैन नॉट बी अ टाइप. अगर हम ये कहते हैं डेटाबेस के टाइप्स क्या हैं, तो उसके दो ही टाइप्स हैं, सेंट्रलाइज्ड एंड डिस्ट्रीब्यूटेड, एंड इन डिस्ट्रीब्यूटेड वी हैव थ्री सब क्लासेस. Okay, so now again let me see the sheet. Okay, what is the difference between 2-tier and 3-tier client server? So this is something related to the question number 3 and 4 are related to the point which we have discussed. That what is the difference between a file-based system and database system, right? A class में note किया था question. So file-based systems are running in the two layers of architecture, two-layer architectures. Two schemas are there, but in case of database we have 3-layer or 3-tier structure. इसको आप देख सकते हैं बुक में भी काफी सारा अवेलेबल, बट आपको इतना क्लियर होना चाहिए कि why they are having 2 layers, what is the limitation in 2 layer, that's why we are gone for 3 tier. और एक क्वेश्चन और भी होना चाहिए. Okay, well, this is question number 4. What is the additional functionality incorporated in n-tier architecture? So this question is little important कि आपको ये देखना है कि इन अ डेटाबेस, जैसे हमने कहा था ना कि देयर आर 3 स्कीमा इन डेटाबेस सिस्टम. In database, if there are 3 schema, we get some advantage, right? We have separation between layers, and now because of this separation we can do anything possible in certain layer without affecting others. So that is the simple advantage we get, right? What about if we add one more layer? I mean, instead of 3 can we have 4 layers? So what is the possible advantage we have? So that you should be answering this question. That's what question is asking, right? What is something we will get if we add more layers? Right. Now, with the what? Okay, question number 6 asked with what other computer system does a DBMS interact? Okay, so ये आपको आइडिया होना चाहिए एज ए कंप्यूटर साइंस स्टूडेंट कि DBMS का इंटरेक्शन आपके लैपटॉप में, डेस्कटॉप में किस कंपोनेंट से होता है, ठीक है? तो ये आप अगर ऑपरेटिंग सिस्टम अभी पढ़ रहे हैं तो आपको आइडिया लग जाएगा, बाद में पढ़ेंगे तो because it is the part, this question is something related to the subject of operating system. So operating system में आप सब कुछ सीखेंगे कि आपके सिस्टम में ऑपरेटिंग सिस्टम जो एक सॉफ्टवेयर है वो दूसरे कौन से सॉफ्टवेयर से, सिस्टम सॉफ्टवेयर से डील करता है, because DBMS is a system software. Okay, now we are going to question tutorial number 5, 6. So here if you have any question you can directly post, otherwise I will be just scrolling it. Entity attribute, so these are the questions. Okay, what is the entity type, what is entity set, explain the different. Okay, so difference in entity type is basically this basically is referred as a entity only, ठीक है? हम entity type क्यों कहते हैं? जो हम entities draw करते हैं, like एक entity हमने draw करी employee, हम उसको entity कहते हैं, but appropriate term is entity type actually, right? Entity type means we have kept, because अगर आप ये सोचेंगे एक एम्प्लॉय एक एंटिटी रियल वर्ल्ड में, so whenever we keep all those employees into one single relation table or one single entity, it is a set of entities actually, same set, same type of entities. So एक entity को entity refer करते हैं, ठीक है? Entity set means all the entities. So in your diagram, if you have 4-5 different entities, so this entity set is referring to all those entities. set of all these entities, right? So often entity set means database हो सकता है कि अगर आपने कंपनी डेटाबेस का एंटिटी डायग्राम ड्रॉ किया तो उसकी जितने एंटिटीज हैं उनको अगर आप कहेंगे तो कहेंगे कि दिस इज द एंटिटी सेट फॉर द कंपनी डेटाबेस समथिंग. Okay, question number 3 says we can convert any weak entity set to strong entity set by simply adding appropriate attribute. Why then do we have weak entity sets, right? So this I think we have discussed. So yes, naturally we can convert, and that's what we are doing. जब हमने conceptual diagram से logical diagram में mapping define की तो हमने क्या किया कि जो weak entity है उस पर strong entity इस पे dependent है weak entity उसके primary attribute को add किया to make it strong, to make it existent, right? That's what we are doing. So question is asking why do we need a weak entity? Naturally, weak entity are required to represent or to maintain the possible relation between two entities, right? Where one entity is weak and one entity is dependent on the other, and it is not applicable for each and every entity set or entity, right? Now, question number 4 says what is meant by a recursive relationship type. This we have discussed, right? Recursive means we are referencing to the same. So like in the case of company database, we have taken company में जो employee table था उसमें था employee entity था उसमें there was a self referencing or recursive relationship because it is referencing to the company itself. It is referencing to a employee itself, right? Okay, now so you can have multiple examples for explaining the recursive relations. Okay, so now what is the participation role when when is it necessary to use role names in the description of relationship type? So this we have discussed that participation means that participation, total and partial, right? So that is basically is the answer. So what is the participation role? Participation role is basically a structural constraint which is explaining the maximum minimum value for the participation of object of a entity in a relationship. So naturally, when it is necessary, when you want to explain, when you want to describe the somehow real or more realistic values of the participation of an object in a relationship, then you can use the participation rule. Now, question number 6 says describe the two alternatives of specifying a structural constraint on relationship types. What are the advantage and disadvantage? So this is something important. So you can have your own alternatives. Can we have? So addition to this relationship ratio and structural constraint, you can have your own way of explaining the structural constraint. कि जैसे हम कभी क्या कर रहे हैं min max यूज कर रहे हैं और उसके साथ साथ कई जगह relationship ratio यूज कर रहे हैं, तो हम अपना खुद भी मैकेनिज्म डिवाइस कर सकते हैं. Objective is to only describe or represent the participation. So that is up to your understanding कि आप कैसे कर सकते हैं. बहुत सारे मैकेनिज्म हो सकते हैं, उसमें आपको क्या हो सकता है मैकेनिज्म अपना. That is upon you. So ये कोई इस टाइप क्वेश्चंस रहेंगे. ये क्वेश्चंस जो हमने आपको ट्यूटोरियल शीट में दिए हैं ये केवल इसलिए नहीं है कि आपको मैंने दे दिया आप कर. यही इवेंचुअली होगा क्या कि आपको मैं जो ट्यूटोरियल शीट शेयर करूंगा थ्रू आउट दिस सेमेस्टर, दैट विल बी सम काइंड ऑफ सेट ऑफ क्वेश्चंस जो आपके एग्जामिनेशन में आएंगे. इन्हीं में से कोई क्वेश्चन आ सकता है, मिक्स भी आ सकता है, एक सिंगल क्वेश्चन डायरेक्ट भी आ सकता है. सो दैट्स व्हाई आई एम डिस्कसिंग दिस ट्यूटोरियल शीट विद यू राइट नाउ, एंड दैट्स व्हाई इट इज इंपॉर्टेंट टू be ready with. Okay, now for this thing, okay, now question number says a scenario. Now you have to construct a ear diagram. So based on your understanding, you can draw a diagram for this question. Okay, now we are going to question tutorial number 7 to 8. So question number 1 we have already taken. Question number 2 says consider a diagram in which same entity set appears several times. Why it is aligned in? Yeah. So एक सिनेरियो है कि okay, let's draw our ear diagram जहाँ पर एक ही entity को आप बार-बार यूज कर रहे हैं. सो एक ये डायग्राम उसमें अगर 3 or 4 एंटिटीज हैं, सो आउट ऑफ 3 4 देयर आर 2 or more than 2 एंटिटीज आर 3. सो 4 अगर एंटिटी है एक डायग्राम में, तो 4 में से अगर 3 एंटिटी सेम है, that's what is saying. So redundancy say what is considered as a bad practice and what is the possible issues we will face. So I think this is a very common sense based question. So actually ये हो सकता है कि आप जैसे एक एंटिटी यूज कर लो इंस्टीट्यूट कॉलेज डेटाबेस के केस में कि पर्सन बार बार यूज करो, पर्सन पर्सन पर्सन. सो वन पर्सन वन एंटिटी. हमारा जो इम्प्लीकेशन ये था कि वैसे जो आप डायग्राम ड्रॉ कर रहे हैं, तो आप ये कह सकते हैं कि जो फर्स्ट एंटिटी है पर्सन, वो फैकल्टी को रिप्रेजेंट कर रही है. दूसरी जो एंटिटी है जिसका नाम पर्सन है, बट इट इज इंडिकेटिंग और it is consisting of students, and third possible person name entity is referencing to the non-teaching staff. आप कह सकते हैं कि as a database designer this is what I understand, but naming these 3 entities as a person will have a lot of confusions, right? तो वो सिनेरियो आप समझ कर सकते हैं ये बैड प्रैक्टिस क्यों है और इसमें प्रॉब्लम्स क्या होंगी प्रॉब्लम, राइट? दिस इज समथिंग यू कैन टेक आउट. तो इसका आंसर आप डिस्कस कर लिख सकते हैं आराम से. नाउ क्वेश्चन नंबर 3 से डिजाइन अ जनरलाइजेशन स्पेशलाइजेशन हायरार्की फॉर अ मोटर व्हीकल सेल्स कंपनी. The company sells motorcycles, passenger cars, vans and buses. Justify your placements of attribute at each level of hierarchy. Explain why they should not be placed at a higher or lower. Okay, so that's a simple something. So you can so ये हमने एक क्लास में डिस्कस किया था कि how to basically you can take the basic entities जो फर्स्ट में ड्रॉ करते हैं कि okay there are 4-5 entities, motorcycle, passenger cars, vans and buses. उनके आप attribute define करिए. Then you can start planning for first you should be planning for the specialization. ठीक है, तो स्पेशलाइजेशन में क्या होगा कि विद इन लेट्स से मोटरसाइकिल एंटिटी, उसके क्या मोटरसाइकिल में जो सब टाइप्स हो सकते हैं, क्या सब क्लासेस हो सकते हैं. लेट्स डिफाइन द स्पेशलाइजेशन फर्स्ट, राइट? दैट इज द वन पार्ट. एंड देन जब आप किसी भी एंटिटी को, अगर आपके पास 4 एंटिटीज हैं, उनकी सब क्लासेस डिफाइन कर लेते हैं, देन यू कैन इजीली फाइंड आउट दैट within these subclasses or maybe within these entities we can have some kind of generalization also. So in case of generalization you have to create a new entity in upper level, right? In the higher level, and few attributes you can migrate to the upper level, something like that. So ये आप कर सकते हैं. It is a basically practice based question. Now question number 4 says, question number 4 is a question which basically appears in the final paper, in semester paper of the last year batch actually, right? And surprisingly only few students got the correct answer. So it is something related to again the specialization concept. So here we are trying to merge 2 separate banks. So let's say SBI is merging with, or maybe some ABC bank is merging with SBI. तो दोनों क्योंकि बैंक्स हैं, तो मोर और लेस ये होगा कि बहुत सारी एंटिटीज सिमिलर होंगी दो डेटाबेसेस में, राइट? सो क्वेश्चन सेज कंसीडर 2 सेपरेट बैंक्स दैट डिसाइड्स टू मर्ज. अज्यूम दैट बोथ बैंक्स यूज एग्जैक्टली द सेम ERS. सो अगर आप सेम ही यूज कर रहे हैं तो आइडियल केस है. इफ द मर्ज बैंक इज टू हैव अ सिंगल डेटाबेस, देयर आर सेवरल पोटेंशियल प्रॉब्लम्स, राइट? द पॉसिबिलिटी दैट 2 ओरिजिनल बैंक्स हैव ब्रांचेस विद द सेम नेम, the possibility that some customers are customer of both banks, the possibility that some loans are account numbers were used at both original banks for different loans. Or for each of these potential problems, describe why there is indeed a potential for difficulties. Propose a solution to this problem. For your solution, explain why any changes that you should be or you should have to made, and describe what their effect would be. So basically what we are trying to do, so the scenario is clear. So there are 2 banks, ideally दोनों banks का schema similar है, ये तो ideal case है. Now you have to merge these 2 schema. So it is kind of generalization. So merging means generalization है, right? So generalization में आपको क्या करना है कि eventually जैसे generalization में हम कहते हैं कि जो entities थी initial entities, उनको maintain करते हैं, उनकी कुछ attribute ऊपर move कर लेते हैं, right? Because these attributes is common. But हमारे केस में क्या है, दोनों participating entities सिमिलर है बिल्कुल, बिकॉज सेम डेटाबेस है. तो इसको हम जनरलाइजेशन का बेस्ट केस कह सकते हैं, दैट फ्रॉम दीज 2 पार्टिसिपेटिंग एंटिटी वी कैन inherit upwards each and everything. We can generalize each and everything. So we'll have eventually one single database. तो ये जो challenges हैं, several potential problems हैं, ये data value के इन पे है. तो उनके basically बैंक ब्रांच का सेम नहीं हो सकता है. तो अगर आपके डेटाबेस में एक ब्रांच नाम की एंटिटी थी, तो उसमें जो वैल्यूज हैं वो दोनों में सेम है, दोनों बैंक के. So if we are having this kind of problem डेटा वैल्यू में, ना कि डेटाबेस कंसेप्चुअल डेटा में या कि डेटाबेस स्कीमा में, उस केस में आप नया एट्रीब्यूट्स इंसर्ट कर सकते हैं टू बेसिकली डिस्टिंग्विश, राइट. सो ये तो सिनेरियो गिवन था, बट अगर आपको मर्ज करना डेटाबेस, तो डिस्टिंग्विश करने के लिए यू कैन हैव अ एडिशनल एट्रीब्यूट आल्सो इन द जनरलाइज्ड स्कीमा. तो जो भी तीनों पॉसिबल केसेस इसमें दिए हुए हैं, पोटेंशियल प्रॉब्लम्स गिवन है, वो सब इस पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से हैं कि जो भी डेटा वैल्यूज इंसर्ट कर रहे थे डेटाबेसेस में जो डेटा वैल्यूज थी, उनको जो मर्ज कर रहे हैं, तो डेटा वैल्यूज की वजह से प्रॉब्लम्स आ रही हैं. तो इस केस में यू कैन इंट्रोड्यूस अ डिफरेंट एडिशनल एट्रीब्यूट्स इन द जनरलाइज्ड. तो इसके बाद थोड़ा सोच सकते हैं आप. सोचने के बाद आप नोट डाउन कर सकते हैं कि क्या पॉसिबल सॉल्यूशंस हो सकते हैं. सो दिस इज फ्रॉम द लास्ट शीट, ट्यूटोरियल नंबर 9 and 10. Okay, so this is again question. This question is again repeating, and this talks about how to map a schema which we have designed for this scenario, and how to map that into a large-scale schema. So I think आप सबने draw किया है as a I think part of some assignment. Now you can map it to the large-scale schema. You can define the schema first. जो ये डायग्राम ड्रॉ किया है उसका इक्विवेलेंट स्कीमा बना लीजिए, नेचुरली विद द डिफाइंड रूल्स कैसे ये डायग्राम को मैप करना है. Okay, this question is I think clear. Question number 2, define constraints in the relational database modeling primary key. I think these are the clear. We get the clear results. Now, okay, question number 3 is again asking for a scenario to draw the diagram. It was designed logically scheme for given terms. So you can do that, right? So based on this scenario, you can draw a database. So now, like you can see that if you read the scenario, there are a lot of situations where these values are given. Like in case of the database needs to keep track of US state name like Texas, New York, California, and include the region of state whose domain is northeast, middle east, southeast. So this is something where you can have the check constraint, right? So whenever we are defining attribute like region name, so for that region name attribute, you can define this check. Only these 4 values will be accepted, right? So for that purpose, these values are given. So I think we have done with each and every question. We have gone through this tutorial sheet. So if you have additional question, you can share, right? So let me stop. Cancel. Okay. Okay. Now I'm available for a discussion of your questions. If you have, you can share with me. Yes, please. Do you have any question? Otherwise, we can close this class. अवदीप, आपने ज्वाइन किया उसके पहले ऑलरेडी फॉर्मेट डिस्कस कर दिया है, ठीक है? So we are not going to repeat. Okay, so I'm waiting for next 30 seconds questions. Otherwise, I will be closing this class. Okay, now I'm closing this class, right? So